Before we get started, I want to explain a little bit, just briefly, who Anchor is. For those of you who don't know us, Anchor Network Solutions, we're located right here in the Denver metro area, and we are an outsourced managed IT services provider. So we work with small businesses, helping them with all of their technology needs, from roadmap and budgeting to day-to-day IT support for cloud, local infrastructure, and helping clients with their cybersecurity, helping them with the things that keep us up at night for our businesses. Today, our speaker is JC Dobbs. She's our Director of Strategic Services. I'm Vince Tinarello. I am the Director of Business Development at Anchor Network Solutions, and I've been here for 22 years. JC is our Director of Strategic Services. She's been here for 20 years as well, and has a lot of experience in the industry. She's the former CIO of a regional healthcare facility, and I'm really excited for her to share her experience and knowledge with you. So I'll turn it over to JC. She's going to go ahead and go through the webinar. We'll have time for Q&A at the end, so please do put questions in the chat or in the Q&A, as I will be monitoring those. Welcome, awesome. JC.
Thank you. Thanks, Vince. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to present, and I really hope you walk away feeling that this was an hour well spent. We do have a lot that I'm going to try and cover in the next 45-ish minutes. And like Vince said, at the end, we'll have some good Q&A. And hopefully have you give the ability to ask us questions of what things might be keeping you up at night. So with that, I just want to talk through the agenda real quick. So again, why are we here? What's the purpose of this today? Probably the biggest question. And then I'm going to go into really where do we start. So we're going to talk obviously a lot about cybersecurity and what that looks like, what that foundation, what that layer of security is. Part of my goal whenever I present is, regardless of the topic, is that you can walk away with some tangible, actionable, something you can put in place tomorrow, and that's what you're going to get. So we're going to talk about foundation. Then we're going to move into the building blocks, kind of when am I done? And spoiler alert, you're never done, especially with security. It's always an ongoing thing. And then we'll wrap up, just like Vince said, with a Q&A. So there is a Q&A active. You can go ahead and put your questions in there at any time. We're probably going to hold until the end to answer those. However, Vince is going to be monitoring that a little bit. If a question comes in that's pertinent to the conversation at hand, he might interject and have us answer it right away. So please go ahead and put those in as they come up. All right, so why are we here? Again, probably the most important question of the day. Why is cybersecurity something that everyone should care about, regardless of position, title, company size, you name it? Again, why is it important? And I'm not a huge stat person, so but these really help explain what I'm going to go through next, why cybersecurity is important, especially to the small and the mid-sized businesses. So definitely not a scare tactic, but this is obviously the reality that we live in. So nearly half of the cyber breaches that impact businesses, they have fewer than 1,000 employees. So again, that small mid-sized market, right, is a big target. This one here is when we talk about things that keep us up at night. I mean, Vince and I, we specialize in small and mid-size. So small businesses actually have the highest rate of targeted malicious emails, 1 in 323. And small businesses experience 350% more social engineering attacks than those at larger enterprises. So if we dive into this just a minute, the thing that comes out at me here is it's a targeted malicious email, right? So it's not your typical, I get spam and phishing and all those things. It's targeted. It is the social engineering piece is really important, right? They're trying to get access in and being very intentional about it. And if I'm the bad guy, right, if I'm the threat actor, I want a good ROI on my time and investment, just like anybody would. So why am I going to go after the larger enterprises that have millions, if not billions, depending on the company you're talking through, dedicated strictly to security, right? I'm going to go after the small and mid-sized market that might not, on average, have very much budget. They might not have the things in place. It's a much easier entry point for me if I target that than if I target one big conglomerate, right? So if I get 10 small businesses, that's a big return on investment versus my one big one that I might not get. So just some of those thought process behind why this is important. And I think it's good to get out of the mindset of, well, I'm small. There's really not much that somebody would want from me. I'm not a big target. It doesn't really matter, right? And the statistics actually prove that. Most of what you're going to see that causes a breach, it's human error, system failure. I mean, that's really half of it. This is just that things happen, right? And the human side of it, which is another topic I like to talk on, is like building that human firewall, right? We're only as good as our weakest link. And you'll hear me talk about that a little bit later, but human error is a big one. System failure is a big one. 75% of SMBs, so your small and mid-sized market, actually have stated that they couldn't continue to operate if they lost their data, if they were hit with ransomware. So I would challenge you to think about that. If we get off of this call, this webinar, and all of a sudden your data is not available to you, what is the most precious data that you have for your industry, for your company, your organization? What if you didn't have access to that, right? How would you continue? What would that look like for you? And could you continue to operate if you lost it all? So that's the reality that we live in today. And again, 75% actually stated that they wouldn't be able to continue. And last, if I was doing polls, which I'm not, I'd love to poll the group to see who actually has cyber insurance. At the time that I pulled these stats, only 17% of small businesses have cyber insurance. So when you think about things that keep Vince and I up at night, that's one of them, right? Is we really preach to our companies and our clients that you really have to have cyber insurance. What we're going to talk about today is really just risk mitigation, right? You're taking something that's a huge risk and we're putting things in place to kind of shrink that up. And what you end with, right? There's no silver bullet unless you unplug from the internet. So what you end with, that's really where your cyber insurance comes into play, right? It's there for the big events. It's there to help with the risk that you just can't get rid of. And it is very important to have in place. So definitely another topic. If you have questions around cyber insurance, I'm happy to help answer those again as we move through this. So your takeaway from that past slide is really just that no one's immune, right? It doesn't matter your size. It really is something that you should be thinking about. But what we also are trying to get at is shifting the narrative a little bit, right? We're no longer talking about if something's going to happen. We're talking about when an incident occurs. So keep that in your frame of mind as we go through this. And again, what we're trying to do is reduce risk, right? And reduce that impact that it has when you do experience a security incident. And then knowing that this is a journey, there is no destination, there is no end to it, right? If you hear me give this talk a year from now, I guarantee you what I'm going to say is foundational is probably going to be a whole new set of expectations that we're going to have with clients. So this is a journey, it's never ending. And I think, again, having that mindset is going to really help you, especially as you start to take the first step. That is part of what we're doing today is kind of helping you with where do I start? What is that first step? So we're going to help you kind of begin that journey. The last two on here is just, I think it's important to note that not everything we're going to talk about has a dollar amount tied to it. Not everything requires you to spend money. Some of the things we're going to do, you could put in place tomorrow with very little effort. And there are some things, obviously, that need some budget around it, but not everything requires you to spend money. And then the last one is just your IT professionals are there to help. So whether that is an MSP, whether you have in-house, whether you're working with one person, if they're worth their salt, they should be able to take what we talk about today and either help you implement it or maybe take a step back and make sure and verify that you have these things implemented. I always like to trust but verify, right? Make sure that they can show you how they're doing it. But you really do, and you should have an IT professional that's a partner for you. I use that word intentionally. I think in this day and age, an IT professional and IT companies should have a partnership with the organizations they work with because it really truly is that versus just an outside vendor. So make sure you have a good IT professional that can kind of help you navigate this journey and continue on down the course. All right, so moving on to foundation. Where do we begin? There is a reason why we kind of picked the words foundation, and there's a reason why we say you kind of need to go back to basics. I truly feel like a lot of people in the industry make security way more complex than it needs to be. And don't get me wrong, there are some very technical aspects of things that you should put in place. But these next articles, and don't feel like you have to copy these down. We're going to put them in the chat so you can grab them later. But I wanted to reference, even in that last link, it talks directly from Microsoft, who states 99% of your security breaches can actually be prevented just by basic hygiene. So again, a lot of these things are very foundational. They're very basic, but if you put them in place, you're going to see a lot of benefit come out of them. So again, why we talk about foundation, why some of these things in this list, you might say, yeah, that's a no-brainer. You're right. But you'd be amazed at how many times we come across organizations that don't have them in place. So again, you kind of want to take a step back. You want to think about basic hygiene, and you're going to get a lot of good movement forward in that security journey that you're on.
JC, before you move on from this, when we talk basic security hygiene, and we've talked about your experience in the industry and as CIO of that regional hospital, you were involved in a breach. You had it, well, let's use the correct term of, you had a security incident that happened at the hospital.
Yes, not a breach, but yes.
Yeah, take a couple of minutes to elaborate for our attendees on what happened there.
Yeah,
and
so
what your experience was, that you've actually lived through one of these, and from including the business side of what you all had to do in terms of serving patients.
Yeah, I joke that I can't relive this story without a bottle of wine in front of me. It was not a fun day. It was not a fun week when all was said and done. But in the end, it turned it out as good as we possibly could have asked. So, CIO of a regional hospital in a rural community, right? Hospitals are stretched out. So, when we had a threat actor get into our network, we had drilled for this, we had trained for this, thank goodness, and ended up having to black out the network and shut everything down because we weren't sure where the point of entry was at that given time, and had to really reroute patients. So again, rural regional health care, if you know anything about rural America, we're kind of spread out a little bit. And that was a big deal. And it was scary for us at the time of trying to gauge patient safety and patient health and the health of the network, and not having trying to prevent a breach, because at that point we didn't really know what was happening. When all is said and done, it's a good slide to ask this question on, because when all is said and done, it really did come down to basics of us allowing a vendor of ours to dictate how they accessed our network. And they never admitted to it, but we had enough evidence that the vendor side was breached, which then led to the threat actor getting inside our network. And it was all based on older technology, right? Just some of the basics that we knew we probably shouldn't have done. And this was 6-7 years ago, but things that we knew probably shouldn't be there. But man, this vendor wants it this way. We're a kind of a smaller operation, so I don't know if we have much of a say. And that really changed our thinking on things of, no, doesn't matter size. You can dictate how you operate with other vendors and other software companies out there. And really in the end, they accessed our network, but nothing exited our network. So it was really interesting to go through that process. We used our insurance heavily. I was able to experience what that felt like of getting an incident started and then giving you a forensics team, and all this, just these other entities came together to help us make sure that what we were seeing was right, and reviewing our logs and being able to verify that, yeah, they got in, but nothing exited. Your patient data was safe. And that was sealed the deal for me on, one, you do have a say. 2, your backup or your basic hygiene is super important. And 3, the importance of cyber insurance. So never would love to use cyber insurance again. I don't want to go through that, but it's there for a reason, and they really did know their stuff, and man, they helped guide and direct us throughout the whole process. So yeah, good question. And again, I'm happy to go through details. That's a 30 seconds or less of something that encompassed a long period of time.
Well, and for context for everyone on the phone, on the webinar, these things never happen at a convenient time. No. It's my understanding that JC was on her way out of town on vacation, on her way to the airport, when she got the call that this had happened, and had basically turn around, right? Because
Yeah.
this was affecting operations at the hospital. And when we use the term vendor in this case, that was electronic medical records, right? The
Correct.
software that the hospital uses to access patient data. So
Yep.
think about the software you use, whether it's membership data or just client data, right? And so that's the scenario where maybe your software vendor says, hey, we've got an update, we want to log into the to the server, the network, whether it's cloud-based or on premises, and make updates. If you think back to Target and Home Depot, I believe Home Depot, that incident was through the HVAC system. They were trying to do updates remotely to an HVAC system, and that's how there was access that way. It can happen in the craziest scenarios. Key card access to your office, software on the network, right? Video surveillance. So those are some of the ways that credentials, right? Access points from partners and vendors that you might work with.
Yeah. Yeah. It all ties together. I mean, we talk about, which I'm going to get into the list of kind of what is foundational, right? What you should be doing, but really kind of owning who has access to your network is a big key for that, and making sure that you have that IT partner that can manage that and monitor that a little bit is going to be really important.
Yeah, as you all will see, this isn't, most of these things don't happen from China or Russia, bad actors hacking through your firewall. Yes, those get, banged on all day long from foreign actors, but that is not typically, as JC is going to show you, where these things come from.
Yep. Yep. All right, so getting into some of the practicality of it, right? And I can kind of lean on that experience at the hospital for this very first one, which is you have to have a good backup solution in place. So did we want that to happen? Did we expect that to happen? Absolutely not. But we had a backup solution in place that, one, we knew was ransomware protected, and two, had business continuity built in. So again, yes, regional hospital, but all the way down to a small organization with a handful of people, your data is important. So you cannot eliminate all the risks, but again, what you're trying to do is make it so you can continue to operate and this isn't detrimental to you. And a good solid backup solution is going to be your first step in that. When I say ransomware protected, what we want to ask, and this is something you can talk with your IT professional about, is it's got to break the chain. So if my system gets compromised, I don't want those threat actors to be able to follow that chain up to where I have my backup and infect my backup. That chain has to be broken so there's no access. The other piece is all around business continuity. So asking the questions, if something happens, how fast can you get me back up? Is it a day? Is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? And then what's the risk of losing data, right? Am I losing a day, a week, a month? What am I losing? So you really need to understand how your backup solution works and what those expectations should be from it. And again, your IT professional is good. There's a lot of great solutions out there that you can utilize. Next on this list is a firewall. So we live in a hybrid world, right? We have physical offices. Some people are fully remote. Some people are hybrid. You have some clients that have physical infrastructure still on a network, and some are completely in the cloud. So when I say that, and when we talk about firewalls or next-gen firewalls, you still need, regardless of all of that, you still need a firewall. That could be a physical piece of next-gen firewall, like physical device that sits in a network or in an office. It could be a cloud-based firewall, but any way you shake it, you've got to have a firewall. You've got to have that guard, right, that is checking and making sure that people coming and going inside your primary network, that it is secure and it is checking what that traffic looks like. So you got to have a firewall. Antivirus, this is something that, love it or hate it, it is still going to be on all your cyber insurance forms. It is still something that is required. I'm going to talk a little bit about this in another slide, but antivirus is more passive, what I would call passive. It's like an endpoint protection where you get something on your system with a file and it sees it and it quarantines it, right? There's other stuff that we're going to recommend that is more proactive, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but antivirus is still a must. Everybody still requires it. Consistent patching. This is one of those foundational things that you might hear a lot of. You've got to patch, you got to patch. Absolutely. Here's the reason behind it, right? Microsoft, whoever you use, there's going to have holes in their software. They're going to find some type of vulnerability. and then they're going to fix it. They're going to put a patch out. But what they do is they essentially give the playbook right out to the threat actors. Hey, we have this breach, this vulnerability in our software, and you guys need to patch it with this. Here's what it does. Here's why we're patching it. If you're not consistently patching, it's just an open door for somebody to come in because Microsoft has already told them, or whoever you're using, name your software, that this is a vulnerability. So it's got to be consistent. It's easy to automate. It's easy to push out. And again, something that you can report on, something that you can ask for, that trust but verify, to make sure that your patching is being done consistently. Next on the list that falls in line with that is really supported operating systems. So a while back, we were talking about Windows 7. Today, we're talking about Windows 10. So Windows 10 is end of life in October. So we are staring down the barrel of that. It's going to be here before we know it. You need to be on a supported operating system for the same premise of the patching, right? Once Microsoft says, and again, it's a Microsoft decision, but once they say we're done with this operating system, it's end of life. Doesn't matter if they find a vulnerability, they will not be putting any effort into fixing it or patching it. So you need to be on a supported operating system. That's why, and you want to make sure you have a game plan in place, that you're moving yourself to Windows 11. This could also be servers. This can be a version of Adobe. So anything that you're using that might be end of life or too old to be patched, you need to invest in doing some upgrades for those.
With some of the things JC's showing you, I encourage you to think about what answer you would give your constituents, right? Clients, members. If you had an incident, how did that happen? Well, we were on an old version of Windows that's no longer supported. Well, we didn't have a firewall. Well, we didn't keep our systems up to date. Like that message, that doesn't come out very well, right, to your constituents. So when you think about some of these things, think about the message how would I explain this to my constituents?
Good point. Next on here is local admin rights. So probably a decade or so ago, this was a hot topic of, do we take them away, do we not? And now it's pretty much a guaranteed. Cyber insurance forms will require this, and it really is allowing staff and your users to work under what we consider a least privileged principle. So what that means is I need the least amount of privileges to get my job done. I don't need you to open up everything and then funnel, right? Like it's you get just what you need to get your job done. There are tools out there that make this easier. We incorporate one where it allows to whitelist known good things, but yet require access or somebody to elevate your access for others. So there's ways around it. Is not as disruptive as it used to be. And again, something we would highly recommend. Never run with local admin rights. Cyber insurance, a little speaks for itself a little bit. Again, we could probably have an entire webinar just on cyber insurance. I can say from my example with the hospital how important it was, and it wasn't even a breach on our side, and it was vital to actually getting to that decision. But this really does help you again, right? We're mitigating risk. It helps you with that last piece that you just can't ever get rid of. And when you ask, some of the questions are like, what's the right amount of coverage? That is all based on your industry. And most of the time they have a calculation that you can use. So utilize your carrier and your insurance agent to really be able to help you decide what coverage and level you need. And then we can certainly help with other questions that might come up with that. But cyber insurance is definitely a must. All right, so we've got our foundation, right? We've got everything in place. We're good. We've got a solid ground to now kind of start to build up on. This next one, I could probably argue that should probably be in foundational, but you have got to have multi-factor authentication on everything that you can. So anything that's cloud-based, your email especially, remote access, any kind of software that you're accessing, anything that allows you to use multi-factor, please put it on. Yes, the bad actors now can get around it. Of course they can. They're very smart, but this is very hard to get around, and it is a good layer of security that everyone needs. Also something that is on every cyber insurance form. Email security. So this gets a little bit into the technical, but any kind of IT provider that, again, is kind of worth their weight, they should be able to go in and make sure this is good for you. So you're looking at things like proper licensing. We're primarily a Microsoft shop, so Microsoft likes to give you lots of different options, but there are some that include different things around security that we would recommend. So proper licensing, security policies, and then DNS records, which is really just making sure all on the back end, right? The emails that are flowing from good domains to other good domains. And then it helps reduce, not get rid of, but helps reduce the phishing, the spoofing, all of that that can come out of email. So having good email security is going to be key. And then manage detection and response. So this is where, when I talked about antivirus is more endpoint detection, right? Like a device protection, very passive. Managed detection and response is very proactive. So this is your security operating center, what we consider a SOC, SOC, and it monitors 24/7. But what it's looking for is known bad actors. It's looking for activity that is irrational. It is looking for elevated credentials. It's looking for things that are abnormal in your environment. So it is more of a proactive approach. I would say one thing that lets Vince and I sleep better at night is knowing that we have this in place for our clients. This was a big one for us a few years ago. And honestly, right now, you can't be a client of ours without it. It's too much of a risk. So we utilize a platform called Blackpoint Cyber. We love them, but there's tons out there: CrowdStrike, Arctic Wolf, Sentinel. There's lots of different MDR solutions. This one does require some movement in the budget, right? You need to have a good one in place, and it does cost, but the return on investment and the ability to sleep at night is well worth it.
Think of, I like to use the term threat hunting, whereas antivirus just constantly scans what's there, but an MDR goes and looks for bad guys, right? So I like to use let's say it a Gulf War analogy, where antivirus is just out in the public looking around. Do I see any bad guys? No. But an MDR is going door to door and kicking down doors, hunting for bad actors. And that's kind of what an MDR does. It's a lot more proactive, as JC explained.
Yeah, well said. All right, so last part of building blocks, last couple points here is security awareness training with phishing. Building a human firewall, again, a whole nother webinar that I like to do, but that is, you're only as good as your weakest link, right? So I'm the weakest link, like your staff can be the weakest link. Like you have to be able to build this culture of awareness, and you do that through ongoing training and proactively phishing your staff. So this is important. The shift that we're seeing with insurance is, one, they're tired of paying out claims. So where it used to be, do you have this in place? Yes or no. Now we're starting to see, do you have this in place? Yes or no. If yes, I need to see proof that it's ongoing. I need to see proof that your staff is actually doing it. I need to see proof of your phishing campaigns. So they're becoming more aware of, you have to prove what you say you're doing. And this is one area that we're seeing that happen with insurance. So again, security awareness, you want to build that culture. That's what this is for. And you want to constantly test your employees on that. Active Directory AD services, another one of those highly kind of technical areas. But if I was to simplify it, what this does for you is it kind of gives you this parent, this brain at the top that then manages all of your endpoints and your devices below it. Some industries, like if you're healthcare and you're regulated under HIPAA, this is really a must, it's a requirement. But this really does help with that proper endpoint management. And man, you can do a ton with it. So again, a little bit more of the technical side. The nice part is what used to be very expensive to put in place, Microsoft has really helped. So we talked about the licensing levels and how they like to have a million different flavors. Most of the ones that we would recommend actually include their AD services product. So now you kind of have it. You just need somebody to help you take advantage of it and actually put it in place. So that's been a good change on the Microsoft side. All right, if I was doing polls, which I'm not, but I wish I was, because I would ask everybody this question. Do you think, whether you're Microsoft or your Gmail, G Suite, that they are backing up your email? Yes or no, right? Most people would say yes. We hear it all the time. Well, Microsoft backs up my email. I don't know why I would need something different. That answer is wrong. That answer is no. What Microsoft and Google are doing is they will guarantee you uptime. They will guarantee their platforms are there. while there's some mechanisms of being able to retrieve certain things once deleted, if you lost a mailbox, if an email was corrupted, which we're seeing more now from a ransomware perspective, they can get inside that mailbox. Microsoft and Google, they're not going to back up that solution. So one thing that we recommend is a third-party backup solution. Is very inexpensive, and it really does cover a lot of things for the money. So we're primarily Microsoft. So it's going to back up Teams, it's going to back up SharePoint, OneDrive, OneNote, email, calendars, right? You name it, it's backing up everything in your tenant. So definitely something to ask. You get a lot for not a lot of effort and money on that one. So that's a big one. And then last on this list is password management. So, you know we can't write them in a notebook anymore. A password protected Excel file really isn't great. So we do recommend using a password management tool. A lot of people say, how is that any more secure? The difference in is how it encrypts and decrypts. So when you create that password, that master password or passphrase, you are now that decryption key. So let's say if somebody is hacked, LastPass was, they had a breach, they can get the database all day long. It's jumbled, it's encrypted. They can't do anything unless they have you, unless they have the decryption key. So that's kind of the difference and why it's important, or why it's more secure. How about that? All right, last slide, and then we're going to go into Q&A. So if you have questions, now would be your time. Go ahead and throw them in there. Mention this as a journey, right? So we have foundations, we have those building blocks. What's kind of these finishing touches? And again, you could argue that these could be in a different level. A lot of it is based on regulation, but full disk encryption, easy to do, comes free. You can do it with Windows 10, you can do it with Windows 11. Zero trust. Honestly, if you hear me do this again, that zero trust is probably going to be higher up into the building blocks. This is essentially trust nobody. If we talk about how do we sleep better at night, think of zero trust as this nice warm blanket that's just going to kind of cover everybody and keep you even more secure. So every device and user has to verify itself before it can have access. And what used to be very complex and hard to implement is now very easy to implement. We've actually started to do this with a handful of clients and with almost zero interruption of their day. So zero trust important. Vulnerability scans, again, this can be a compliance thing where you have to do it. A lot of the different tool sets might actually include vulnerability scans. Our MDR solution does, so we can tap into that. Again, no extra cost, just something that you do. External penetration tests. So pen testing is important. Again, some of this is regulation depending on where you sit. The one thing that I will stand on, and is kind of a soapbox for me, is this should be a third party. So we work with a lot of private equity and they do a lot of pen tests. I don't want that to be us. It shouldn't be us. This needs to be somebody else coming in and verifying that we're doing what we say we're doing. So that's kind of a red flag to me. If you have somebody that's in-house or an IT provider that says, oh no, we can pen test our own stuff, maybe not. It is important to have that be validated by an external entity. Tabletop exercises, super fun. Sometimes this can be, it's like a choose your own adventure, right? But man, is this eye-opening. And a tabletop exercise is really just going through a ton of what ifs, right? What if this happens? What if this happens? And it blends the technology and the human and the process side all together, right? Sometimes your risk isn't so much technology, but maybe one person in your organization is super important. What happens if they're not available, right? How do we do this? So tabletop exercises can be a lot of fun. And then as you move forward on your security journey, you are going to eventually land in needing a framework. You are. So whether that's NIST, whether that's CIS, if you're healthcare, again, that could just be HIPAA guidelines. Like, what is that framework? And that's really where you're driving towards. That does get more complex. It does add some different layers, but man, it's nice because they really kind of spell everything out for you. And you kind of have a playbook now of what you need to do. And then last but not least is our very favorite is policy review. If you're like me, I hate reviewing policies. I hate writing policies, but there is an importance to them. And depending on the complexity and the size of your organization, policy review is also something you should be looking at least on a regular basis. So I think you've heard me talk enough. We will wrap up with questions. And again, hope we have about 7-ish minutes. Want to be respectful of time. If you guys have, oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong clock. We've got plenty of time. I don't have to worry. So we got plenty of time for Q&As. Vince, if there's any questions, let's start.
Yeah, I do have a few questions that were put in the chat. I wanted to add a few other things of context too. Tracy mentioned several times that you're never done, and this is about mitigating risk, right? I'll often hear prospects when we talk with them, small business owners at networking events, say, "Well, we don't really have any infrastructure, so I don't know that we need a firewall." You do. You want to have a firewall whether or not you have servers in your office or not, right? Something standing guard protecting your office and your resources. The other thing is on her roadmap, it was you kind of saw the journey, but just remember that a security incident is most likely inevitable, right? And again, not a scare tactic. It's not an if, it's when. And I keep giving you, I gave you a military visual analysis. I'm going to give you another one here, kind of an analogy. Think of Hitler's Atlantic Wall back in World War II. The Germans on Omaha Beach had bunkers, they had barbed wire, they had those big iron crosses, they mined the beach. They did all of that. That seemed impenetrable. And yet the Allies penetrated and took the beach, right? And so what we're doing here is trying to mitigate our risk as much as possible and then be able to and then have an understanding of, okay, we've mitigated our risk as much as we can. The bad actors still may get through. And when we need to talk with an insurance company and our constituents, we can show them all of the things that we've done to protect our business, right? And to protect client data, whatever it may be. When you do that, and you then are showing the insurance company like you've taken all reasonable steps, they're much more likely to pay a claim. And when you show your constituents, look, we did all of this. We encrypted laptops that might not even have had any data on it because that data was in the cloud. We still had an incident. It's a lot easier of a conversation with them when you can show people you've taken all of the reasonable steps that were out there and you still had an incident. The other point I wanted to follow up on is she talked about security awareness training, right? And we saw some statistics in the beginning of where threats come from. She talked about who is the most risk, and it's the employee. The whole point of security awareness training, email phishing testing, is not to embarrass people. It literally is to help them recognize signs to look for. I actually had one that an email that looked extremely real, and it was about LinkedIn. And I sent it to our general manager, and I said, "Man, look how close this thing was. I almost fell for it." And he said, "Congratulations, you passed the test that we sent out just recently." So it's really important to educate your staff that we're just trying. This is not meant to shame, humiliate. We're trying to raise the bar on our knowledge, because your people are working hard every day, doing their jobs, not thinking about this, right? Not thinking about security all day long. They are rocking and rolling, they're moving fast, and they're trying to get their jobs done. And inevitably, somebody makes a mistake. Somebody gets social engineered, right? I just saw a video a few minutes ago doing my own weekly cybersecurity training on getting a notification that my antivirus is expiring. Call this number to update it, right? And it's very official looking. It comes from a major brand. And then I call up and I either give my credit card number or I click a link to put it in that's secure. And that's an easy way in. And it's not one that I would have expected, that I could have fallen for. So just bear in mind that your people are afraid of these things. They're afraid of making mistakes. We've had clients that have transferred thousands of dollars in money accidentally. They've transmitted W-2s accidentally. And so really what we're looking to do here, especially with cybersecurity training, is just telling your people, listen, we're trying to educate you so that you can recognize these things when they're put in front of you. All right. Okay, so a couple of questions that came in. The first one is, should my IT professional be completing my cybersecurity application or audit for me?
So black and white answer to that is no, they should not. But yes, it should be a partnership. So there's going to be things on your cyber insurance form that you might not know and or that your IT professional should be able to prove, right? So they can run a report, they can show you what it is that you're asking for. So that should be a thing where they can help you with it, but it is verified. You are really on the hook for what you answer in those forms. So you should just double check, verify, but it really should be a partnership with you doing it and signing it. The other thing that we do sometimes is pull in your agent with you. So have your insurance agent on the phone with your IT professional, the three of you looking at things and answering these questions and making sure that you understand them correctly. The one thing that is frustrating, and we see a lot of different carriers, we work with our clients a lot to go through these, is everybody asks the question differently, and you can interpret that question differently. So utilizing your agent to really make sure that you are answering it appropriately to how what they're actually trying to get at is also important.
Yeah, that's great context. And I think sometimes with insurance and security, businesses think, well, great, I've got this insurance, and doesn't my IT person, aren't they responsible for all of this? I would challenge that the answer to that is no, right? You have to, as the business management owner, you have to own your own cybersecurity, right? You have to be invested in it, part of it. You have to know where things are, what's in place, right? What we're doing, and not just be blind to it and say, I don't know, our IT person handles that. I don't mean it at a ridiculously detailed level, but you have to have an understanding of are we protected in these areas? And those are the areas that JC just went through. You'll be able to use those in your business as a good starting point. The next question was, how do I protect work from home or remote users, whether they're in the United States, whether they're international? And I guess some of that, again, if a little more background is, you think about someone on their own home network, right, where maybe family members are doing other things on the same network. Maybe they've got a kid who's downloading things from the internet, movies, games. You're sharing this internet connection, and it's accessing company resources. How do I protect the business from that?
So I still think about security in a layered approach, right? What gets through one layer, hopefully the next layer captures. So the way that we approach it with our clients is, one, you really need to protect your endpoints. So having that managed detection and response, that MDR, that threat hunter, right, on every endpoint is going to be very important. Endpoint protection, doesn't matter where they're at, it protects them. But the other piece that we are really starting to move more people towards is that zero trust. And that was that one at the very end where I was like, gosh, when I do this again, that might be bumped up higher on the list, because it used to be super complex and very expensive, and technology, just in the nature of technology, has changed. And now we have tools that we can put in place that's easier to manage, that doesn't break your bank. And so I think the zero trust model, especially if you're very dispersed and you're not under one location, and it's not as easy to manage, the zero trust model is something I would recommend looking into as well. So MDR, protect your endpoints at all costs, multi-factor, obviously, on everything, and then look at that zero trust, that overall blanket, right, of security.
Okay. And another one that we have here is it okay for our business to have employees use their own computers? We often, that's a term in our industry that's kind of is referred to as BYOD, bring your own device. So JC, give your thoughts on that.
That one is hard. So we have a handful where they have a lot of 1099 contractors. So the struggle that we have in that capacity is 100% around security. If it's my laptop and you're going to tell me you're taking away my admin rights, no, it's my laptop. I want to do what I want to do on it. You're telling me I have to have this level of security on my laptop. What if I don't want that level of security on my laptop? So this is really more of a business decision than anything else. And I argue all day long, there's no technology projects, right? You have business issues, you have business risks, and the technology comes alongside of it. So this is a business conversation of, is it easier if you own them? 100%, because you get to dictate what they can and cannot do on them. Is it impossible to protect if they have their own? No, it's just maybe a little bit more tricky, and you have to navigate around some different things, but there are still ways you can protect yourself. It just depends on your business, how it's set up, and the level of risk that you're willing to accept. So it makes it more difficult, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, one of the ways Anchor
answer.
deals with that, I have a Mac and that I use, and it's mine, and I own it, and I don't want other stuff on there. So in order to access company resources, I have a Windows virtual machine that is secure that I access, a Windows virtual desktop that the company has me go through. And so I can't access, don't have the ability to access any company resources direct from the Mac unless it's web-based, right? Like think Outlook Web Access. If I want to access any company resources, I have to log into that Windows virtual machine, which is secured with company policies. And that also is very helpful too, that if I leave my laptop on an airplane, in a cab, we've seen this happen with clients of ours, right? You know, then there's literally nothing on there, and the machine is encrypted, and those tools are in place. One of the other tools that you discussed earlier that I wanted to mention and see if you had any context on too is, you know, Next Gen Firewall. I know that some of you might have been like, oh, okay, great. Yes, we need a firewall. Check. Firewalls these days are not the firewalls of yesteryear, which was just like this little appliance. Again, another analogy. Old firewalls were the bouncer at the door, right? Just, yes, you can come in, you're 21, you can come in. Now, next gen firewalls are more of, oh, but you have a backpack. I'm going to go ahead and look through there and see what you've got. JC, add a little context of what we see like in this quote next gen firewall as opposed to the old Netgear or Linksys or something you could go buy at Best Buy. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, it is all around like packet inspection, right? Of going a little bit deeper. And you're also seeing, you know, AI is the big buzzword now, but you're seeing that artificial intelligence being built into it. So it is more of a smart device, right? So it can actually interpret things and make kind of almost a judgment call, right, of what's good and what's bad versus your typical in out kind of thing. So you have that with the physical appliances still, they all have security licensing tied to it. There's also cloud-based firewalls that can now do the same thing. If everything lives in Azure and Microsoft, well then physical firewall's not doing you any good. You got to have something that's protecting the Azure environment. So you can have software-based firewalls as well, but you just want something that is more intelligent than what we have typically seen in the past. So.
Okay, good. Couple other questions here. Notes about, I'm sorry, I'm just reading this note here. Oh, something we wanted to share, you know, like, okay, how do you get expertise in this from an industry perspective? Right? Where do we at Anchor get our industry, you know, industry knowledge? Well, a lot of it is through an organization called GTIA. That's the Global Technology Industry Association. Used to be CompTIA, if you've heard of that, and they split off their certification business. We were one of the first, we were the fifth actually, IT service provider in the country to earn a Security Trustmark credential, which really put us through the paces of security and change the way that we do business and how we do things. And it is also what we've been able to extend down now to our clients and help them, right, to ensure that they're doing all of the right things. It's a framework and it is never ending. And some of the tools that we use here are monitoring insurance applications, thought leadership in the industry through GTIA, and we are monitoring security feeds that are updating all the time in terms of third-party products out there, right? It's actually like a security operations center of, hey, this vulnerability was just found with Adobe, or this was just found with Flash, whatever it may be. Those are some of the tools that we use, and we encourage anybody in business, if they're working with some kind of an IT partner, push them on what their credentials are. What do they know about security? right? How are they following it? How are they monitoring it? What are the things that they're doing to further their education? Because it is changing on a daily basis. The last question I had here was about travel, right? Protecting an end user when they travel remotely. Is there any kind of protections from other countries, access that way? Like if someone is trying to access the network from a country you wouldn't typically see, how do you protect the company from that?
So again, that layered approach is going to come in. So our MDR, you can also do it. It's kind of a two-way street with Microsoft as well from an email standpoint, but you can limit, basically called geofencing, right, of limiting the countries that somebody can actually access your network from. So that's kind of step one, to just constantly cover you, right? We have a lot of people that's just, the US and Canada, that's it. If somebody's going to travel, we will open and shut that door as they leave and as they come back. But the other piece is, you kind of go back to that zero trust, and zero trust also has a VPN capability. So if you have to connect to a VPN, you have to authenticate, secure yourself before you can then have access to anything in the company. So kind of a two-layered, depending on what you're traveling for, what you're regulated by, how deep you want to get into things. But geofencing is something we do across the board with all of our clients, just to make sure that you're covered. Again, there's ways around it. It's all about layering. But then the second option would just be having that VPN, that encrypted VPN.
All right. That's all the questions that were put into the chat. Any last minute thoughts that you want to extend to our attendees, JC?
No, I appreciate your time today. And again, my goal when I speak and do anything is that you have something tangible that you can take away from this. So hopefully we gave you that today. If you want to pick our brains, find me on LinkedIn, contact us, like whatever you need. I'm happy to continue the conversation and see what we can help you with, help you answer. So that's about it.
Yeah. Thanks for your time today presenting, JC. For everyone, on this webinar, we're passionate about this. I hopefully you got that from the meeting, that we are very passionate about security and that it is an ongoing journey and it's always going to be something next. And the minute we put this mitigation in place, there's going to be a threat actor that finds a way around that. So it's really important that this is a never done thing. And in terms of sleeping at night as a business owner, the piece I wanted to add for you in closing is like, you can only do so much. So do what you can do. Think about how you would present to your constituents, like we put these measures in place, and then be confident in them. If you know you've done the right things and you put the right measures in place, it's all you can do, right? So paying attention to what those things are is vital. And then from there, know that, hey, I've done what I can, and hopefully you'll enjoy a little bit better sleep at night. Thanks for joining us. You can, as JC mentioned, you can find her on LinkedIn. You can find myself at LinkedIn. You can also email us directly, JC at or Vince at anchornetworksolutions.com. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.